Mucorales is a twisted take on the classic Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale, one that has more than a few unexpected twists and turns. While the experience can be finished in about half an hour, there is a much deeper narrative and mystery to be discovered within it. The game begins with Blanchette bringing food out to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother has fallen ill and directs her to put the basket of food that she brought into the kitchen, where she has some mushroom stew brewing. After placing the basket, you go to your grandmother's room and check up on her. Blanchette decides that since her grandmother isn't doing well, she will stay in her old room and take care of her for the next few days. Grandma is splendid at having a guest visit her, though. However, it is late and she really needs to get some rest, so she mentions that you can have some of her leftover stew so she can actually go to bed. After enjoying some of the stew, you turn in for the night, and after waking up the next morning, you go in to check on Grandma once again. She is looking better, and she even has a little smile that you're here with her. She makes sure you had a good night's sleep, then asks if you could go into the forest and get some more mushrooms for her to make another stew. You happily agree and let her know how much you enjoyed it last night before bed. When we're about to leave, Grandma gives us one last reminder. Don't talk to strangers. And with that, we set out to explore the forest. As we venture out, the drizzling and fog looms over us with an oppressive atmosphere, and the music sets the nerves on edge. There is something extremely off about this forest, and when we find a note that's hung up on the tree, it becomes clear that we should not be here. As much as we want to leave, though, we still need to find tonight's dinner, so we set off and follow the trails looking for the mushrooms. As we follow the path deeper into the forest, we spot a dead deer blocking our path, perhaps hunted by someone. As we get closer, though, something peculiar happens. We still have a few more mushrooms we need, though, and we have to keep moving down another path. There is definitely something in the forest watching us, and the dead Ronik confirms that we need to go home and hide as the wolf is on the hunt. Quickly, we start going back to grandmother's house, unsure of how long we have before the wolf finds us, and hopefully we remember the path out of the forest. When we finally arrive back to grandmother's house, there is a looming darkness in the air. We make it safely inside, though, and set the mushrooms on the kitchen table. We also have a fresh bowl of stew, as we notice that our basket of food has already spoiled. After enjoying Grandma's home-cooked meal, we decide to go into her room and turn in for the evening. Upon waking up, we proceed to check on Grandma again. However, this time her smile is a little eerily large and foreboding even. She lets us know we need more mushrooms, to which Blanchette quickly agrees, and with no time wasted, we go off to find more within the forest. However, immediately after entering the forest, we see trails of blood all over the ground. The quicker we gather these mushrooms and return home, the better. As we travel the path down to where the deer once was, the path is now clear, but blood remains where it previously laid. We travel down the path further and we see a tree with bloody eyes painted on it. Following the trail, we come upon a dog that has a head at both ends of its body and a mouth on its stomach. The disturbing scene is enough for me to flee the area and go down another path. This way I do encounter more mushrooms, but I also hear a strange sound. Knowing that the wolf treads behind me, I try to press forward, but the path is blocked by a fallen tree, so I turn back to the way I came from, and as soon as I notice the pentagram painted on the blood underneath my feet, I'm suddenly trapped. I feel Blanchette's heart racing with my own, and it dawns on me that this is game over. To my surprise, though, after mere seconds, I am able to walk free again. Not wanting to be inside the forest anymore, though, I quickly run to find the last few mushrooms I need and book it back to grandmother's house. Upon entering grandmother's house, I once again feel a sense of relief, and I deliver the mushrooms on the table, eat the dinner that she's prepared for me, before I check in with her and say goodnight. However, before I go to sleep, she tells me an interesting and peculiar phrase. With a more apparent sense of unease, I go to the bedroom and lay down to sleep. However, in the middle of the night, there's a knock on the door. Though I could go back to sleep, my vicious curiosity grips me and overrules the natural instinct I have to just go back to bed, forcing myself to go open the door. Blanchette rightfully slams the door, running back to her room and deciding that she will permanently just stay inside where it's truly safe. After rising again in the morning, we check in on Grandma. She tells us that our body is ready and we proclaim how we feel it. We assist our grandmother in getting her sewing needles and thread as she starts stitching on the mushrooms to our body. We feel so good. The game fades to black and I'm horrified. It was my grandmother this whole time, and this insane fungus is making her go crazy. The stuff we saw in the forest had to be a hallucination, but then my mind stopped as I looked up to see something on the screen. So as I continued into the story, this time when offered the stew, I inspected the basket of food I brought my grandmother instead. I was given a choice to eat it, and so I went on the path to do so. In the morning, I checked on Grandma again, but this time she looked a bit different. She once again asks if we can retrieve mushrooms for her, but Blanchette asks why she would want mushroom stew again for dinner. Grandma mentions how the mushrooms will just make her feel better, so we decide to help her and venture into the dark forest. As we're searching the forest again for mushrooms, we check the note posted on the tree, and we see that it's actually a poster for a missing dog that we found earlier into the game. This time while exploring the forest, there is still an eerie atmosphere, but not quite as sinister as when we had consumed the mushrooms. So I took more time to explore it this time around and actually found that there was another path to see, one where an axe was placed. However, it was too heavy for Blanchette to pick up. After exploring a little more and collecting mushrooms, I traversed back home, ate my food, and went to sleep for the night. Upon waking up and checking on Grandma, though, the next morning, the macabre sight sent a wave of fear through my body. Grandma needs more mushrooms, and despite knowing something isn't quite right, we still proceed to collect them. However, while exploring this time, I hear a gunshot in the distance instead of the original warning that the wolf is coming. My guard was down and I decided to not run in fear, but keep exploring more instead, and it reaped an interestingly and previously undiscovered area. As we follow this new path, we find that there's a well at the end of it, with huge mushrooms growing out of the side. When we interact with it, Blanchette questions if Grandma is still using it for drinking water. Nothing else is explorable in this area, so after collecting the rest of my mushrooms, I once again travel back to Grandma's house. Going through the routine at this point of eating, going to bed, when the knock on the door came, I decided not to answer it because I already have that guy living rent-free in the back of my mind. In the morning, while trying to leave as Grandma said we could, we find out that the mushrooms have overgrown across the door to Grandma's house, so we check on Grandma for a final time. However, it wasn't real. Grandma was never going to let us leave. Instead, she wants our body, this time forcing us to have the mushrooms sewn into the flesh, regardless of our pleading. The screen fades to black and reveals ending 2 of 3. Once again, I boot up the experience and figured the only major choice that I made differently was not answering the door. So again, I had a no mushroom run. This time, however, when I got to the midnight knocking, I prompted to answer the door. To my surprise, it wasn't the wolf at all, but rather a hunter that lives in the area. So certainly the gunshots I heard earlier were most likely him. He explains the strange occurrences around the forest and wants to help us get out of the forest safely, so I accept the offer. As much as it pains me to leave our grandma behind, she is most likely gone by this point, totally consumed by the mushroom infection. As we follow him out of the forest, we see that the axe we had found earlier was actually his, and he uses it to cut a path of mushrooms that was blocking us in the forest. Afterwards, we arrive at his car and he offers to drive us to town so we can get out of the area safely. While the experience concluded and I collected my thoughts, I couldn't help but have a heavy feeling, like a weight that had not been lifted from my anxiety around what was going on within this seemingly small yet intricately crafted world. It was a hole in the game's story that had yet to be filled, a narrative piece that was seemingly out of place yet put in its place for some reason. I started up again, this time committing to a cycle where I once again eat the mushrooms, going through the exact same routine as I had previously. Despite being a little bit scared during the forest sequences, it really didn't seem like the wolf would actually come to get me, but rather it's a scared tactic, it feels, from the mushrooms to drive me back to Grandma's house. So on the first day in the forest, I go to see if I have access to the well. However, it's blocked off this time due to a tree being in the way. On day 2 in the forest, something strikes me when I walk over the pentagram again. It has symbols that flash on the screen, which I previously hadn't noticed, likely due to my sheer fear when first encountering the trap. Now I knew that this had to be some kind of code thrown into the game, but right now I would have to wait and revisit those later, as I needed to keep exploring. And this time when visiting the Hunter's Axe, it actually allowed me to pick it up. This is when that feeling of excitement started washing over me again and confirmed that there was definitely more to discover within this little story. I quickly went back to the tree that was blocking access to that well. However, Blanche wasn't remotely ready for what was waiting for her on the other side. I questioned what this all meant and knew that there was absolutely a secret within this well, and this eldritch creature had something to do with mushrooms that infected Grandma. I just wasn't sure what yet. The biggest question, though, from this experience is, what did it mean when the creature said the wolf ate it and discarded it? This hit even a little harder as I exited the forest and looked at the note posted on the tree again, but this time it had changed to show the wolf. It was the thing that knocked on our door in the night. Upon completing the game again, I started one more run, this time without eating mushrooms. I again got to the point of where I would start exploring the forest on the second day. So I went back to the well and just interacted with it, waited and explored this small area of the game. Seemingly nothing would happen, so I kept interacting with the well, even if just to get a monster or the wolf or something to come out and get me, kind of like the fish within Resident Evil 4 when you shoot it on the end of the bridge. Something surely will happen. There it was. There was a secret about to be revealed. As I fell down into the well, the first thing I see is small broken remains of another poor soul who never escaped this empty abyss. Blanchette is now stuck down here, so we explore, and I can't even explain fully what we found. Blanchette, in her innocence, befriends this creature and learns that this doll dreams and can even walk around the forest, making friends. But eventually, everything for her fades back to a black abyss. The doll allows us to ask one more question, and out of the two options, I thought that it would be more interesting to know how whatever this thing was actually ended up within the well. The doll doesn't remember, though. She just cries when trying to remember or think about it. Blanchette promises that she will get them both out and escape the well as she falls asleep. As I expected, I see another ending screen start to pop up, but all I was met with was a loading error message for ending 4 of 3 PNG. I really wanted to see what the image was supposed to be though, so I did a little bit of file digging and couldn't find it in the game's directory, which was a bit frustrating. That is until I found this. A curious yet spine-tingling rush came over me as I knew that there was something special about this 30-minute horror game. Curiously, this was one of the only files that wasn't in a special file format and I could view without converting anything. There had to be more than just this to discover though, so I started combing over the files. And after I did this, I came across some pretty fascinating discoveries. There were 2 files though that haunted me beyond the others. So this was an audio file that I didn't hear used in the game at all. However, it sounds eerily like the wolf character, and since I personally found it hard to understand, I decided I would clean up the audio in editing, so here it is.
We will meet again. Sooner or later, you know that I need you.
If that wasn't haunting enough, another big part of uncovering the truth was the final image for ending 3 of 3. There was a small piece of Morse code printed at the bottom of the image. I started to question everything, like how could ending 3 be a bad one? It truly was the only one where Blanchette makes it out of the forest and doesn't fall down the well. But then that nervous shiver came over me again as I remembered the small broken body at the bottom of the well, who only cried when she tried to think of how she fell down the well. The QR code at ending 4 of 4 that read, "Why am I bleeding down there?" The doll we discover only with bones below her waist and legs spread far, far too apart. The imagery physically made me cringe at the implications. I believe the hunter is the wolf and killed the little girl. As the realization washed over me, all I could imagine was Blanchette getting into the hunter's car and the door closing behind her, with a false hope that she must have had of safety, only soon to be dashed away from her. So with these revelations, I came to the conclusion that there truly was no happy ending to Mucorales. I was also left wondering, what was the point? Why is this fungus causing mayhem? And if presumably the girl inside the well is able to walk the forest due to the mushroom infection, why is ending 2 so dark? And why did the mushrooms want Blanchette so bad? Fungi is one of nature's most marvelous creations. However, nothing is more intriguing than the mycelium network beneath the forest surface. To simplify it and not over-explain anything, I'm just going to compare it to a human brain. A fungus has a network of pathways that connects and allows communication between the network. It connects plants to share water, nitrogen, and other materials. It's a fascinating network. With that thought in mind, though, I messaged the developer with the concept of human consciousness transferring to that network in a theoretical sense. And while I didn't capture every detail of LuN's vision, they confirmed multiple pieces of my theory to be true. With the only major piece I was missing, the fact that the girl from the well wanted to use Blanchette's body as a host for her own consciousness. While Mucorales is a bleak fairy tale horror that uses lifelike photos and 16-bit graphics to give it an analog horror aesthetic, I decided I had to believe that the game lied to us the entire time. While initially the game tricks us into believing the third ending with Blanchette escaping is the best, I pose that actually the best ending is when you eat the mushrooms from the beginning. Because logically, if the mycelium network can house the consciousness of the girl in the well, we can safely assume that both Blanchette and her grandmother's consciousness can and will exist within that network as well. So with this in mind, Blanchette feels no pain or discomfort after eating the first set of mushrooms. And as disturbing as the body horror is that may come along with that mushroom infection, it appears as if consciously she doesn't have fear around what's going to happen to her or have any sort of pain. While it's horrific in its own right, it still remains a twisted, happier ending than any of the others. But that's what I have to say about Mucorales. I love this game. I thought it was a phenomenal little experience. It is short, it is repetitive, but it's those little things that developers do to make the experience more full and give you a sense of discovery and mystery to solve. Also, if you did enjoy this video, please do the normal YouTube stuff, like, comment down below what you thought of this video and of Mucorales, and please let me know if you're gonna go support the developer. I would love to hear it, and I'm sure they would too, because hopefully they watch this video. But with all that said and done, I'll see you guys in the next video.